Hello, everybody. I'm Anna Chauvel from Labratory, and coincidentally, I'm speaking from Darwin country today as well. And I can confirm that we just had a huge, big, massive hailstorm come over just about 5 minutes ago. I'm a little bit further north than Lyndall's, but it's a pretty stormy day. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack to Lyndall today and really delve into the role of data and how you can help it, how it can help you understand place and then inform design. And while I will talk about 3 projects, I'm not going to go into the same level of detail that Lyndall went through. So as part of Place Labratory, we've always been really interested in the user experience. It's actually one of our key drivers. And this is just a little bit of a diagram that we prepared as part of that project that you saw on the front cover, where we used to explore that journey that the users were having, and we'd try to understand what's motivating them, what the opportunities are, and then more importantly, what those touchstones are, like where those tangible points that people are going to be engaging in with the actual design. And I did so much reading around that user experience. And I recall actually reading an article about product design, and it was actually for a suitcase, believe it or not. And the amount of research and development and testing with actual users that went into perfecting that user experience. And I wondered, given the huge budgets, the $1 million budgets that we have as part of our landscape architecture and public realm works, that why didn't we take that same approach? And so that sort of started us on that experimenting with that user experience and then also delving into data. And so with our projects, what we've actually been applying the data in a couple of different of the project phases. So we've got feasibility and planning. We're applying it through site analysis to inform design, but then there is also the opportunity for that post-occupancy evaluation. That we're also using different types of data. So we work closely with a company called Place Intelligence, where we've been doing where they've been providing us with quantitative data, which is mainly geolocation data, or what we call big data. And then we have the qualitative data, which is the more traditional observation and survey, and where we've worked with Place and Habit, and we've done a few of those projects ourselves. And I really strongly recommend that integrated approach to data, actually combining the quantitative data with the qualitative data, gives you a much more comprehensive understanding. And so the qualitative insights offer that context and that depth to those quantitative findings. And so I'm going to talk to you about 3 projects, and so that and just show you how we've actually applied those data to it. And so the first one is Minderup Piazza in South Perth, and so this is the gateway to the Perth Zoo. And so this actual data set that we prepared for this project was post occupancy, and the project was finished in 2019, and we undertook the audit in 2020, and it was also a little bit at the start of the pandemic, and so that did have a little bit of an impact on the results. And so this is I've just taken a few snapshots from the report that we got for the project. And so they had as part of the big data, they looked at 120,000 signals that were analysed within the study area, and that was over a 24-month period. That wasn't, and that's one of the great benefits of big data, is that you can actually look at data over quite a period, like a long period of time, and then work out trends and averages over that time. And then from that data, they were able to prepare a heat map, and then also prepare an index of activity over a week. And then from that, we were able to do further deep dives into the data, and so we could see footfall patterns on a weekday and then on a weekend. And then we could also understand the demands for different features within the space. And so what we do for that particular exercise is that There was a geofence that was put around each of the different elements in the space, and then we could actually see which ones were being used the most, but also look at how they were being used over a day and then over a week. So we had the time demand as well. And then we could also look at the dwell time, which was looking at where people were dwelling in by location and then also by length of time. And then quite importantly, we could look for this particular project, which was a tourism project, we could also see where people were coming from. And so we looked at it in two different at three different scales. So we looked at international, which was 4%, and you had to keep in mind that WA was pretty, at this point in time, was in lockdown, and so it was very difficult for even someone from interstate to come into the state, into WA, let alone someone from overseas. And then we also had, and we could domestically, there was 96% people, and 95.5 or of those were from actual WA. And then we could drop down into the sort of that Perth central area and see the origins of visitors in that regard. And then you can see that the most were probably coming, the zoo is that little white dot there, and you can see that the majority of people that were using, or the piazza is that little white dot, you can see that the majority of people that were actually using the site were actually from South Perth. So how did this data benefit the project? Well, this was post-occupancy, and so I think that we weren't able to use that data to actually inform the design, but it did reveal those patterns of use over time. And it also allowed us to better understand user preferences and behaviours. And that's quite important, because even though this is a project that had been completed, is that it enables us to then take that data or that information and then apply it forward into other projects. And so that it kind of starts to set up a benchmark for us that we can then compare information against different projects. And I think the most important thing was it actually provided concrete data to the City of South Perth and really helped for them to justify the funding for that project, and then give them confidence then to be able to apportion budgets into other important projects.
Anna, you've just got a question come in from Sarah here. She's just asking, is that mobile data publicly available data? How is it secured?
So we get that information through the geolocation. It does come from your mobile phone, and people obviously opt in to having through their different apps to be able to have that geolocation. It is all centralized by other organizations, and then Place Intelligence subscribed to that information. It's stripped of, and I'll get to this a little bit later on, it's basically stripped of all of the specific details. And so we can't tell people's names, we can't tell people's genders. It's basically just very, very raw data. And it's really how the most important thing is how that data is actually then, what questions you ask of that data. That's the most important thing, is that how you can actually draw out the information that you need. So I'll quickly rush through these. The next one is the City of Wollongong, who were investigating the impact of the West Sydney population growth on their local parks and beaches. And on this particular project, we were combining big data with the place audits. And so, as I said, the beauty of the big data is that we can actually look at like quite large areas for over a long period of time. And this was a year, and we looked at 154 different parks and beaches through the City of Wollongong. And that information was then developed into a dashboard that could be used by the City of Wollongong on an ongoing basis. But what we did do is we actually ground truthed that big data analysis at 10 different locations using those qualitative methods of observation and interview. But keep in mind that those place audits were like basically 1 hour in each of those locations. And so we were really only getting a really small snapshot of what was actually happening there, but it was enough to develop up the patterns. And so you can see activities and uses. And so this is the botanical gardens, and we had the heat map that had been generated by the big data. And then we just went through and tried to actually allocate what sort of activities were actually happening in each of those spaces. And then we, had identified what the amenities were. There was a questionnaire and then also some photographic evidence. But and this is just demonstrating that importance of actually doing that, the place audits and getting that qualitative data, because what we actually could determine from actually going and visiting the place, that was there was a lot of women that were actually using the botanical gardens. And when we sat down and spoke to them about that, they were able to tell us that it was because it was attractive, it was well maintained, and also there was a high perception of safety that was due to the presence of maintenance staff. And we would have never got that insight from just the big data. And so it really demonstrates the importance of that comparative approach. And so I suppose for the city of Wollongong, it helped identify the peak usage times. And also from that, we were able to understand some of the underutilized spaces and then what might be done in those spaces to be able to even out the distribution of use. It also identified where resources would be most needed at peak times, and it helped them plan for those future demographic needs. And the final project was the gender-sensitive urban design, and Inhabit Place helped us with this particular project. They undertook place audits for 5 different places representing 5 different typologies, and the data captured by the auditors was using their particular app, which was built around the framework of Young Girls Public Life and Public Space Studies. And they were capturing the movement, the time and place, and the intercept interviews. And as part of this project, we actually added in specific safety questions to capture those perception of safety in the public space, which was really important as part of our project. And this just gives you a bit of a snapshot of the output of City Walk, and where we had, and they did 2 audits for each places. There was one on the weekday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and one on the weekend from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I suppose that one of the things about gender sensitivity and designing spaces for women and girls is that the importance of the disaggregated data. Like that's one of the sort of the missing data sets in that, understanding how women and girls and gender diverse people use space. And so I think that was the most powerful thing that we got out of the place audits. And then that was backed up by those qualitative insights. And really, that was real evidence for us, and it helped us make decisions based on fact and data rather than assumptions, and also really have more targeted and efficient design interventions and recommendations. And so I'm going to finish up, but I just think that there's so much opportunity with the data, and I don't think that we're actually using it enough. And we hope I've demonstrated that the big data and the observational data really complement each other. And there's a lot of power in combining the data sets to get greater insights. And so you can say, for instance, take dwell time and then compare that maybe to a temperature heat map, and then actually see how that's impacting on people's spaces. If you were doing a waterfront, you could actually do big data or place audits on other waterfronts and then take that information and then apply it to your project. And so you really builds up that evidence-based design. I think that it's brilliant that we're starting to get some really customized analysis tools specifically for public realm developments, because I think that the real challenge there is to be able to translate that complex data into actionable design insights, and be able to have the skill of reading those trends and those pattern uses so that you can then apply it specifically to a project. And that's my segue to Peter to pick up and tell us about Dixon.
That's awesome, Anna. Thank you so much for that.